My husband Cameron looked at my shattered legs and told his mistress I was just dead weight, a piece of broken furniture he had to drag around. He thought my silence was defeat. He didn't know I'd already transferred the contents of our joint account while he was busy smelling her cheap vanilla perfume in our hallway. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. It was 11:14 p.m. on a Tuesday. I know the exact time because the digital clock on the microwave was blinking it at me like a countdown to an explosion. I was sitting in my wheelchair in the corner of the living room, the spot where they'd shoved me so I wouldn't block the flow of traffic to the kitchen. My laptop was balanced on my knees, my useless, shattered knees, and the apartment was dark except for the streetlights bleeding through the blinds. Then I heard the key in the lock. It wasn't the quiet, considerate turn of a husband coming home late to a recovering wife. It was clumsy, aggressive. The door swung open with a thud against the stopper, and laughter spilled into the hallway. Not just Cameron's laugh, which I hadn't heard in weeks, but a woman's giggle. High-pitched, airy, the kind of sound that suggests champagne and bad decisions. Cameron stumbled in first, and she was right there, attached to his side like a barnacle. Valerie. I recognized her instantly from the photos he'd sworn were just college memories he kept in a shoebox. She was wearing a dress that cost more than my monthly physical therapy copay, and her arm was looped through his belt loop, fingers toying with the denim. They didn't see me at first. I was just a shadow in the corner, a piece of upholstery. God, it's stuffy in here, Valerie said, wrinkling her nose. She waved a hand in front of her face, her gold bracelets clinking together. Doesn't she ever open a window? Cameron kicked his shoes off, sending one skidding across the hardwood floor until it hit the wheel of my chair. That's when he looked up. He didn't jump. He didn't look guilty. He just looked annoyed, like he'd come home to find the dog had peed on the rug. "Oh," he said, his voice flat. "You're still up." "I live here," I said. My voice sounded rusty, unused. "And it's Tuesday. You said you were working late on the Henderson account." Valerie squeezed his waist, leaning her head on his shoulder, staring at me with this glossy, pitying look that made my skin crawl. "Is this her?" she asked, like I was an exhibit at a sad zoo. "Yeah," Cameron sighed, a heavy theatrical sigh that rattled in his chest. "Look at her, just sitting there in the dark." "Who is she, Cameron?" I asked, gripping the armrests of my chair so hard my knuckles turned white. "Why is she in our apartment at midnight?" Cameron rolled his eyes, peeling Valerie off his side, but only to walk toward the fridge. "Don't start, Cassandra. I've had a long day. Val is just a friend. She's helping me unwind. God knows I can't do that here anymore." "A friend?" I gestured to her dress, to the way she was now leaning against my kitchen island, tracing the granite counter with a manicured finger. "She's touching you like she owns you." "Maybe someone needs to," Valerie chimed in, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "since you clearly can't handle the upkeep." I felt the blood rushing in my ears, a roar that drowned out the hum of the refrigerator. "Get out!" I spat at her. Cameron slammed the fridge door shut, a beer in his hand. He turned to me, his face twisted into a sneer I didn't recognize. "She stays. You don't get to give orders, Cass. Look at you." He gestured vaguely at my legs, encased in heavy braces, hidden under a throw blanket. "You're completely worthless right now. Every part of you is broken. You're just dead weight. A cracked statue I have to dust and feed. You can't even satisfy me anymore. You can't even satisfy yourself. So if I need a friend over to feel like a human being again, you're going to sit there and deal with it." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Valerie giggled again, a sharp, cruel sound. "He's not wrong, honey. You look like you belong in storage." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. My hand slid under the blanket on my lap, my fingers finding my phone. I pressed the red button on the voice memo app. To understand why that moment shattered me more than my bones ever could, you have to understand who I was 3 months ago. I wasn't a statue. I was a landscape architect. I spent my days in steel-toed boots, climbing muddy embankments, shouting orders over the roar of excavators, and hauling rolls of blueprints that weighed as much as a toddler. It was a Tuesday then, too, early March. The air was crisp, smelling of wet earth and impending rain. I was on a site in the West Hills, a massive terraced garden project for a tech billionaire. We were inspecting the retaining wall on the 3rd tier. "Cass, watch that footing!" my foreman Mike had yelled. I turned to give him a thumbs up. "I'm good, Mike, just checking the drainage weep holes." I wasn't good. The scaffolding plank I was standing on, which had been signed off as secure an hour ago, shifted. It didn't break. It just slid, a smooth, sickening glide to the left. 1 second, I was looking at the horizon. The next, the world flipped. I fell 20 feet. I didn't pass out immediately. That's the cruel part. I remember the impact. It wasn't a thud. It was a crunch. A sound like a bag of potato chips being stomped on, but louder, wetter. I landed legs first on a pile of concrete pavers. The pain didn't hit instantly. It was a cold shock first, a white light that blinded me. Then, the fire started. It felt like someone had poured molten lead into my thighs. I tried to move, to roll over, but my legs, they didn't follow. I looked down and saw my left leg bent at an angle that defied biology. The ambulance ride is a blur of sirens and ketamine, but I remember waking up in the ER hallway, waiting for a trauma bay. Cameron arrived 40 minutes later. He rushed in, looking frantic. But when he saw me, the first thing he said wasn't, "I love you," or "Are you okay?" He looked at the nurse adjusting my IV and asked, "How long is this going to take? I parked in the short-term lot and it's $6 an hour." I blinked at him through the haze of painkillers. "My legs are broken, Cam." I know, he said, running a hand through his hair, checking his watch. "It's just, I have that presentation with the board tomorrow morning, Cass. The timing is really bad." He stood by my bed while they cut my favorite work boots off my feet. I was weeping, not just from the agony, but from the fear that I'd never walk again. Cameron was texting. He was literally scrolling through his phone while I screamed as they set the bones. "Can you keep it down?" he whispered at one point, leaning in close. "People are staring." That was the first crack in the foundation. I just didn't want to see it yet. 3 weeks later, they discharged me. I was sent home with a wheelchair, a walker I couldn't use yet, and a prescription for painkillers that made the world feel like it was underwater. "I'll take care of everything," Cameron had promised my mother in the hospital lobby, putting on his best, devoted husband face. "You don't need to stay, Mom. I've got this." He didn't have it. The first week back was a lesson in humiliation. I was stranded on the sofa because our bedroom was upstairs and Cameron hadn't cleared out the guest room on the first floor like he promised. So I slept in the living room surrounded by pill bottles and dirty laundry. One afternoon, about 4 days in, I needed water. My throat was so dry it clicked when I swallowed. Cameron was in the kitchen, 10 feet away, making a sandwich. "Cam?" I rasped. "Can I get a glass of water, please?" He stopped spreading mayo, his shoulders slumping. He let out a groan that vibrated through the floorboards. "Seriously, Cass, I just sat down." "You're standing up," I pointed out gently. "You're making a sandwich." "I'm trying to eat lunch. I have 5 minutes between calls." He grabbed a glass, filled it from the tap aggressively, splashing water onto the counter, and walked over. Instead of handing it to me, he set it on the coffee table, on the far edge, just beyond my reach. "Thanks," I said, reaching out. My core muscles were shot from the bed rest, and the brace around my torso made twisting agony. I stretched my fingers, grazing the cold glass. "Cam, I can't reach it." He was already walking back to the kitchen, taking a huge bite of his sandwich. "Just stretch a little, Cass. You need to keep your muscles active. Dr. Patel said so." He said, "Gentle movement, not gymnastics for hydration." I grit out. I pushed myself forward, the wheelchair creaking. My fingertips hooked the glass. I tried to slide it closer. Crash. The glass tipped. Ice water flooded the table, pouring onto the rug and soaking into my compression socks. Cameron whipped around. "For God's sake!" he yelled, throwing his sandwich onto the plate. "Look what you did!" "That's the vintage Persian rug, Cassandra." I couldn't reach it. I was crying now, hot tears mixing with the humiliation. "I told you I couldn't reach it." "You're so clumsy," he muttered, grabbing a roll of paper towels and throwing them at me. They landed in my lap. "Clean it up. I have a meeting." And he went upstairs. He left me sitting in a puddle of ice water, dabbing at the rug with trembling hands for 3 hours. 2 weeks into my homecoming, the smell started. My best friend Jasmine came over on a Thursday. Jasmine is the opposite of me, loud, colorful, and completely lacking a filter. She's a freelance makeup artist who treats every interaction like an interrogation. "Okay, girl," she announced, barging in with a bag of Thai takeout and a shower caddy. "Cameron texted me saying he's swamped and can't help you shower tonight, so you got me. And I brought the good exfoliating scrub. He's working on the Henderson account," I said automatically, defending him. "It's a huge merger. He's really stressed." "Stressed men drink whiskey and yell at the TV," Jasmine said, hauling me up so we could transfer to the shower bench. "They don't abandon their wives who currently have the mobility of an overturned turtle." While she was helping me dress afterwards, a process that involved a lot of undignified tugging and swearing, she paused. She was holding one of Cameron's shirts that was draped over the bathroom chair. "Cass," she said, sniffing the fabric, "since when does Cameron smoke menthol lights?" "He doesn't," I said, adjusting my brace. "He hates smoking, says it's a filthy habit." "Well," Jasmine shoved the shirt under my nose, "smell this." I inhaled. It was faint, buried under his expensive cedarwood cologne, but it was there. The sharp chemical tang of cheap menthol tobacco, and underneath that, something sweet. Cloying. "Vanilla," I whispered, "like cupcake vanilla." "Cheap body spray," Jasmine diagnosed, her eyes narrowing. "The kind teenagers buy at the mall. Does Cameron have a secret teenage life I don't know about?" "Maybe he was at a bar," I suggested weakly. "Bars smell like that." "On a Tuesday morning," Jasmine countered. She dropped the shirt like it was radioactive. "Cass, wake up. He's not at a bar. And look at this." She pulled out her iPad. She had the login to our shared cloud account because she'd helped me set up the digital photo albums for my portfolio years ago. She tapped on the Shared Devices tab. "Why is his location turned off?" she asked. "It was on last week." "He said the battery was draining too fast," I lied. I realized I was lying to myself more than her. "And these credit card alerts?" Jasmine scrolled. "Sephora, Victoria's Secret, the W Hotel bar, all in the last 10 days. Since when does Cameron buy lingerie? Did I miss a birthday gift?" I stared at the screen. The total at Victoria's Secret was $240. I hadn't worn lingerie since the accident. I was currently wearing cotton granny panties because they fit over the scars. Maybe he's buying me something for when I recover?" I offered, my voice trembling. Jasmine looked at me, her expression softening into heartbreak. "Oh, honey, men who sigh when you ask for water don't buy you $200 lace teddies for someday." That night, I couldn't sleep. The smell of vanilla was stuck in my nose, a phantom scent that made me nauseous. Cameron came home at 9 p.m., mumbled something about a brutal strategy session, and went straight to the shower. He scrubbed himself for 20 minutes. Around 1 a.m., I woke up to a noise, a soft rhythmic clicking. I rolled my wheelchair toward the sound. The apartment layout was open, but the balcony door was around a corner, hidden by a heavy curtain. The glass door was cracked open about 3 inches. Cameron was out there. I stopped my wheels, holding my breath. The rubber tires on the hardwood were silent, thank God. I sat there in the dark, straining my ears. He wasn't speaking in his work voice. that deep, authoritative baritone he used for clients. His voice was higher, lighter. "No, babe, stop," he laughed, a genuine laugh. "Yeah, she's asleep. The meds knock her out cold. She's basically a zombie after 10 p.m. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. "I know," he continued, his voice dropping to a husky whisper. "I missed you today, too. That hour at lunch wasn't enough. God, you looked good in that skirt. No, she has no clue. She thinks I'm drowning in spreadsheets." He paused, listening. "Saturday? Yeah, I can probably get away. I'll tell her I have to go to the office to oversee the server migration. She doesn't know what that means anyway. She thinks the cloud is actual weather." He laughed again. "Okay, love you. Bye." I reversed my wheelchair, my hands shaking so badly I almost missed the rim. I rolled back to my corner, pulled the blanket up to my chin, and closed my eyes. The balcony door slid shut. Footsteps approached. I regulated my breathing, forcing slow, heavy exhales. "Cass?" he whispered. I didn't move. "Good," he muttered. The next morning, while he was making coffee, I kept my voice steady. "I heard you on the phone last night, late." He didn't even flinch. He poured almond milk into his mug. "Oh, yeah, sorry if I woke you. It was the IT guys. The server in the downtown office crashed. Total nightmare. Had to talk them through a reboot." "IT guys call you babe?" I asked, testing the waters. He turned, his eyes cold and flat. "What?" "You were dreaming, Cass. It was Derek from tech support. He calls everyone buddy. You're hearing things. It's the painkillers. You should really talk to Dr. Patel about lowering your dosage. You're getting paranoid." 3 days later, I was desperate for air. I felt like I was rotting in that apartment. Jasmine was working a wedding, so I decided to brave the hallway myself. I maneuvered my chair out the front door just to sit by the large window at the end of the hall that overlooked the street. I was sitting there watching traffic when a door down the hall slammed open. Mrs. Higgins. Mrs. Higgins was the scourge of Building 4B. She was a woman in her 60s who wore floral muumuus and seemed to have a personal vendetta against Joy. She'd reported us to the HOA for having a welcome mat that was too abrasive and for our trash bags being tied suspiciously loose. She marched toward the trash chute, holding a dripping bag of garbage at arm's length. She saw me and stopped. Her eyes narrowed behind her thick glasses. "Finally getting some sun?" she barked. "Hi, Mrs. Higgins," I said, bracing myself for a complaint about my wheelchair tires squeaking. She dumped her trash down the chute, dusted off her hands, and walked right up to me. She leaned down, smelling faintly of cat litter and lavender. "Tell your husband," she said, pointing a gnarled finger at my nose, "that his cousin needs to learn how to park." I frowned. "Cousin? Cameron doesn't have a cousin in the city." "The blonde one," Mrs. Higgins insisted. "The one with the loud Audi. She takes my spot. Spot 42, every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. Sharp. She stays for exactly 2 hours. My stomach dropped. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those were the days I had my heavy physical therapy sessions in the morning. I usually came home at 1 p.m., took my heavy pain meds, and passed out for a nap until 5 p.m. "She comes here?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "To our apartment?" "Well, she doesn't come to visit me," Mrs. Higgins scoffed. "She parks, she buzzes 404, he lets her in." I hear them in the hallway. Giggle, giggle, giggle. Disgusting. And she wears those heels that click on the tile. Clack, clack, clack. Wakes up my cat. She straightened up, adjusting her muumuu. "You tell him. Next time she parks in 42, I'm towing her. I don't care if it's family." She marched back to her apartment and slammed the door. I sat there, frozen. He wasn't just meeting her at hotels. He was bringing her here, into my home. While I was passed out in the next room, drugged on the medication he encouraged me to take. That brings us back to Tuesday night, the night I finally snapped. After I hit record on my phone, Cameron continued his monologue about my worthlessness. It was like he was trying to impress Valerie with how cruel he could be. "Look at this place. Cameron said, sweeping his arm around the living room. It's a mess. Dust everywhere. She used to keep it spotless. Now, I have to do everything. I have to cook. I have to clean. I have to work 10 hours a day to pay for her medical bills. I have insurance, Cameron, I said, my voice shaking, and my disability payments cover my share of the rent. Your share? He laughed. Your share is peanuts compared to the stress I'm under. Do you know how embarrassing it is? Going to client dinners alone? Explaining why my wife isn't there? People think I'm leaving you at home because I'm ashamed of you. And frankly, I am. Valerie picked up a framed photo from the mantel, a picture of us in Hawaii before the accident. She tapped her nail against the glass. You guys looked cute here. Shame about the everything. She set it face down. So what's the plan, Cam? I asked, staring him dead in the eye. You bring her here? You insult me? And then what? You expect me to just roll into the bedroom and pretend this didn't happen? I expect you to know your place, Cameron said, stepping closer. He loomed over me, using his height to intimidate. You are dependent on me, Cassandra. You can't walk, you can't drive, you have nowhere to go. So yeah, you're going to go to the bedroom, put on your headphones, and let me have a life. Or... He leaned down, his face inches from mine. I could smell the alcohol on his breath. Or what? I challenged. Or I stop paying for the premium cable, he sneered. And maybe I stop picking up your prescriptions on time. Maybe I forget for a few days. See how much you like being independent then. Valerie laughed from the kitchen. Ooh, tough love. I like it. Something inside me broke. Not like a bone, like a dam. You are a small, pathetic man, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. And you, I looked at Valerie, you're trespassing. Go to bed, Cass, Cameron barked. Now. He grabbed the handles of my wheelchair and shoved me toward the hallway. Hard. My head snapped back. Don't touch me, I screamed. Then move. He shoved again. Get out of my sight. I wheeled myself backwards, spinning away from him. I'm going. Enjoy your friend. But remember this conversation, Cameron. Remember you said I was worthless. I rolled into the bedroom and locked the door. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn the latch. I sat in the dark bedroom, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I could hear the muffled sounds of the TV in the living room, the clink of glass, their low, murmuring voices. I needed to hear it. I needed to know I had it. I pulled my phone out from under the blanket. My thumb hovered over the Voice Memos app. I tapped the file labeled New Recording 4. Error, file corrupted. Duration, 0 gigabytes. My stomach dropped through the floor. No, 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 no. I tapped it again. File format not supported. I must have hit the stop button too quickly, or maybe the app crashed when the phone jostled in my lap during the shoving match. Or maybe the universe just hated me. I tried to play it one more time. Silence. Just dead. Digital silence. Panic clawed at my throat. I had nothing. No proof. Without that recording, it was just my word against his. And he was charming, successful Cameron, the saint who stayed with his crippled wife. I was the medicated, paranoid woman who fell off a scaffold. Damn it, I whispered, slamming the phone onto the mattress. I had the memory. I had the rage. But in a court of law? In a divorce settlement? I had zero. He could deny everything. He could say Valerie was a cousin, a colleague, a hallucination. He could say I was abusive. I lay back on the pillows, staring at the ceiling fans spinning lazily in the dark. I listened to them in the other room, the sudden swell of music, the sound of... Oh, God. He was doing this. He was actually doing this. I put my hands over my ears and squeezed my eyes shut. I didn't cry this time. The tears were gone, replaced by a cold, hard knot in my chest. I needed a new plan. I couldn't just catch him. I had to destroy him, and I couldn't do it alone with a broken phone. The next morning, Cameron left at 7 a.m. whistling. He didn't even check on me. At 8:30 a.m., Jasmine arrived, and she brought the cavalry. "This is Marcus," she said, gesturing to a tall, lanky guy in a hoodie who looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. "My brother, the one who works in cybersecurity. Also, I brought donuts." Marcus didn't say hello. He walked straight to the smoke detector in the hallway, stood on his tiptoes, and peered at it. "Model X45, easy." "Cass, tell them everything," Jasmine said, setting up camp on the coffee table. She swept Cameron's coasters onto the floor. I told them. The confrontation, the threat to withhold meds, the corrupted file. "He threatened your medical access?" Jasmine's face went deadly serious. "Okay, that's not just cheating. That's abuse. We are going nuclear." Marcus was already unpacking a duffel bag. He pulled out 3 tiny black devices, no bigger than a quarter. "Pinhole cameras," Marcus explained, his voice flat. 4K resolution, motion-activated cloud storage. I can hide one in the smoke detector, one in the bookshelf behind the router, and one in the kitchen vent. "Is this legal?" I asked. "It's your apartment," Marcus shrugged. "You're on the lease. You're consenting to record your own home. As long as we don't put them in the bathroom, we're golden." "Do it," I said. While Marcus rigged the apartment, Jasmine and I opened the financial front. I logged into our joint bank account. "Okay, checking." I scrolled through the transaction history. Mortgage, utilities, grocery. "Wait, what?" Jasmine leaned over. "There's a transfer," I said, pointing. "March 15th, $5,000 to Global Ventures LLC. April 2nd, another $5. April 20th, $5,000. $15,000? Jasmine gasped. "Where did that come from?" "The house fund." I felt sick. "We were saving for a down payment on a house with a yard. That money, it's gone. Who is Global Ventures?" Marcus looked up from his laptop. "Give me a sec." He typed furiously for a minute. "Global Ventures LLC, registered agent, Valerie Thorne." The room went silent. "He gave her 15 grand, I whispered. "My money, our money. He gave it to her." "He's funding her lifestyle," Jasmine said, her eyes blazing. "Or she's scamming him, or both." "We need him to admit it," I said, looking at the tiny camera Marcus was installing in the bookshelf. "We need him to say it loud and clear." Phase 1 of the plan required me to be an Oscar-worthy actress. When Cameron came home that night, I didn't scowl. I didn't hide. I was sitting at the table wearing a nice blouse with a store-bought lasagna in the oven. "Hey," I said softly as he walked in. He stopped, suspicious. "Hey, what's this?" I wanted to apologize." I lied. The words tasted like ash. "For last night. I was emotional. The pain was really bad, and I took it out on you and your friend." Cameron relaxed instantly. His ego inflated like a balloon. "Well, I'm glad you realize that, Cass. It was really uncalled for." "I know." I looked down at my hands. I feel so isolated. I shouldn't have been rude to Valerie. She seems nice." "She is," Cameron said, grabbing a beer. "She's great. She's really smart with business stuff. Maybe," I paused, swallowing my bile, "maybe you could invite her over for dinner? Properly this time? I'd like to start over. If she's your friend, I want to be cool with her." Cameron looked at me, stunned. Then a slow, smug smile spread across his face. He thought he had won. He thought I was finally broken, submitting to the new normal where he got to have his wife and his mistress at the same table. "That's really mature of you, Cass," he said. "Yeah." "Let's do that. How about Friday?" "Friday is perfect," I said. "I'll text her," he said, pulling out his phone. "She'll be thrilled." He walked away, whistling. I looked at the bookshelf where the tiny black lens was hidden between War and Peace and a succulent. The red recording light blinked once, invisible to him, but shining like a beacon to me. "You have no idea," I thought. "You have absolutely no idea." Friday arrived with the grim inevitability of a root canal. By 7:00 p.m., the apartment smelled of roasting garlic and deception. I was positioned at the head of the table, dressed in a soft knit sweater that hid the brace around my torso. When Cameron walked in with Valerie, the air shifted. She was wearing a cream-colored jumpsuit that looked dangerous near marinara sauce, carrying a bottle of wine that I recognized from the 2 for $15 bin at the corner store. "Hi, Cassandra," she chirped, breezing past me to kiss Cameron on the cheek. "So sweet of you to have us. Cameron says you make a mean lasagna." "It's store-bought," I said, forcing a smile that felt like staples in my cheeks. "But I added extra basil." Dinner was a masterclass in gaslighting. Cameron sat at the opposite end of the table, acting the benevolent patriarch. He poured wine, laughed too loud at Valerie's stories about her consulting business, and occasionally threw a pitying glance my way. "You know," Valerie said, swirling her glass, my crystal Riedel glass, and looking around, "this place has so much potential, but the layout is all wrong for a wheelchair. If I lived here, I'd open up that wall, make it more flowing." Cameron nodded, chewing thoughtfully. "We've talked about renovations, but, funds are tight with the medical bills." I set my fork down. The camera in the bookshelf was blinking its invisible rhythm. The one in the smoke detector was capturing the top of Valerie's head. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the ambient jazz Cameron had put on, "funds aren't that tight. I saw the transfer, Cam, the 15 grand to Global Ventures." The room went dead silent. Cameron choked on his wine. Valerie froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "I what?" Cameron sputtered, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "Cass, you're confused. That's a work investment for the firm." "Is it?" I turned to Valerie. "Because the registered agent for Global Ventures LLC is Valerie Thorne. Is that you, Val? Or is there another Valerie Thorne spending my house down payment?" Cameron stood up, his chair scraping violently against the wood. "Okay, that's enough. You're being paranoid again. Val, I'm sorry, she's on heavy meds." "I'm not on meds right now," I said, calm as a frozen lake. "I'm perfectly sober, and I'm also the only name on this lease." "We're married," Cameron snapped. "It's marital property. I live here." "Actually," I pulled a folded document from under my placemat. "My grandmother's trust pays the rent. The lease is in my maiden name, and under the terms of the lease, unauthorized occupants are a violation, especially one stealing my money." I pulled out my phone and hit the speaker button. 911, what is your emergency?" "You're crazy," Valerie hissed, standing up. "I have an intruder in my apartment," I told the operator, staring dead at Cameron. "He brought a woman who is refusing to leave, and I feel unsafe. I am disabled and cannot physically remove them." "Hang up!" Cameron lunged for the phone. "Touch me," I said, "and you add assault to the list. The cameras are recording, Cam. Cloud storage. It's already uploaded." He stopped, his hand hovering inches from my face. He looked at the bookshelf, then at the smoke detector. His face drained of color, turning a sickly gray. "You wiretapped me?" he whispered. "I secured my home," I corrected. When the police arrived 10 minutes later, it was humiliatingly short. They looked at the lease. They looked at my wheelchair. They looked at Valerie, who was now crying about her reputation. "Ma'am, you need to leave," the older officer told Valerie. "Cameron," she wailed, "do something." Cameron looked at me. There was no love left, just pure, unadulterated hatred. "Fine, we're leaving. I'm not staying here with a psychopath." "Leave the key," I said. He threw his key ring on the floor. It skidded under the table. Then he grabbed Valerie's hand and slammed the door so hard the plaster around the frame cracked. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't lonely. It was clean. I didn't sleep that night. I spent 4 hours downloading footage. I clipped the dead weight comment. I clipped the admission about the money. I clipped the moment he lunged at me. The next morning, Jasmine drove me to see Robert, a divorce attorney she found who had a reputation for being a shark in a suit. Robert was a small man with glasses and a tie that looked like an optical illusion. He didn't offer me tea or sympathy. He just plugged my flash drive into his computer. We watched the footage in silence. "Pause," Robert said, pointing a pen at the screen. It was the moment Cameron said, "You're just dead weight." "That's gold," Robert murmured. "Emotional distress, verbal abuse, abandonment." He fast-forwarded to the dinner scene, the admission about the $15,000 transfer. "And that," Robert leaned back, steepling his fingers, "is dissipation of marital assets. We can freeze his accounts by Monday morning." "I don't just want a divorce, Robert," I said. "I want him to regret the day he met me." Robert smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "We're not just going to divorce him, Cassandra. We're going to bury him in paperwork. By the time we're done, he won't be able to buy a pack of gum without a judge's permission." We served him on a Tuesday. I insisted on it. Robert hired a process server to go to Cameron's firm, a high-end accounting office with glass walls. The server walked right into the middle of a client meeting, handed Cameron the thick envelope, and said loudly, "You've been served, Mr. Vance." The voicemail started at 11 a.m. Beep. "Cassandra, what the hell is this? Freezing the joint account? My card got declined at Starbucks. Fix this. Now." Beep. "You witch. You planned this. You trapped me. I'm going to sue you for illegal surveillance. I talked to a lawyer." Beep. Heavy breathing. Background traffic. "Look, Cass, baby, I'm sorry. I panicked. The papers. It says you want the car and the retirement fund. Can we just talk? Please? I'm staying at a Motel 6, Cass. It smells like mildew." Beep. "I hope you rot in that chair. You hear me? You're nothing without me." I saved every single one. I forwarded them to Robert with a timestamp. "Keep digging, Cameron," I whispered to the phone. "Keep digging." With the legal war launched, I turned to the physical one. I fired my gentle, "Let's take it easy" physical therapist and hired Miles. Miles was a former Army medic who ran a rehab clinic out of a converted warehouse that smelled like rubber mats and sweat. "I don't care about your feelings," Miles told me on day one. He was built like a tank with tattoos running up his neck. "I care about your quads. Your quads are atrophy soup right now. We fix that." He put me on the parallel bars. "Stand," he ordered. I gripped the bars. My arms shook. I pushed. The pain in my legs was blinding, like someone was flaying the muscle from the bone. I gasped, collapsing back into the chair. "It hurts," I wheezed. "Yeah, gravity hurts," Miles said, not moving. "Try again." "I can't." "Why are you here?" Miles asked, crossing his arms. "You want to walk or you want to be right? Because you can be right and sit in that chair forever, or you can hurt and walk." I thought about Cameron. I thought about him calling me a cracked statue. I thought about Valerie parking in spot 42. "Spite," I gritted out. "I'm here for spite." Miles grinned. "Spite is good fuel. Spite is high octane." Again, I pushed. I screamed. I stood for 3 seconds. Hubris is a funny thing. 2 weeks into training with Miles, I thought I was invincible. I was home alone. It was 9 p.m. I decided I didn't need the shower chair. I wanted to stand under the water like a normal human being. I gripped the grab bar, pulled myself up, and let the water hit my face. It felt glorious. Then the soap slipped. I instinctively shifted my weight to catch it. My left leg, the bad one, buckled like a wet straw. I went down hard. My hip hit the tile with a crack that echoed in my skull. "Ah!" The scream tore out of my throat. I lay there, water pounding on my chest, legs tangled. I tried to push up, but the floor was slick and my body wouldn't cooperate. The pain was nauseating. I reached for the emergency pull cord I'd installed. It was 6 inches too high. I lay on the wet floor for 45 minutes. The water ran cold. I started shivering. The silence of the apartment wasn't clean anymore. It was terrifying. I stared at the phone on the sink counter. I could yell, "Hey Siri," and call someone. I could call Cameron. He would come. He would love this. He would scoop me up and say, "See? I told you." My hand twitched. The temptation to be saved was so strong it made me dizzy. "No," I whispered. My teeth chattered. "No." I dug my fingernails into the grout. I dragged myself inch by agonizing inch out of the stall. I used a towel to dry the floor enough to get grip. I clawed my way up the toilet, then the sink. I got back into the chair. I was freezing, bruised, and sobbing, but I hadn't called him. The next week, Robert called me with an update on the financials. "Good news and bad news," he said. "The bad news is he spent another 10 grand before the freeze took full effect. The good news is we know where he is." He sent me a screenshot. It was Valerie's Instagram, a photo of 2 drinks with little umbrellas against a turquoise ocean. Location: the Royal Sands, Cabo. Caption: "Living our best life. Haters gonna hate." "Your new beginnings. Entrepreneur life." "He took a payday loan," Robert explained, his voice sounding delighted. "A predatory one, 200% interest, to pay for a vacation he can't afford, with a woman who is bleeding him dry." I zoomed in on the photo. In the reflection of Valerie's sunglasses, I could see Cameron. He was looking at his phone, his forehead creased with worry. He wasn't enjoying the view. He was checking his bank balance. "Let him enjoy the sun," I said. "He's going to come home to a thunderstorm." The rumor mill in our city is small. Jasmine heard it from a friend who heard it from a guy who went to gym with Cameron. "Valerie isn't just a mistress," Jasmine told me over wine, cheap wine because I was saving every penny. "She's a crypto consultant." "Oh no," I started laughing. "Please tell me it's not NFTs. Worse, it's some offshore arbitrage fund. Global Ventures isn't her company. It's a shell for a Ponzi scheme run by some guy named Crypto Chad in Miami. She's recruiting downstream." "And Cameron gave her my house money?" "Cameron thinks he's an angel investor," Jasmine snorted. "He's telling people he's going to retire at 35. Cass, he's put everything in, his 401k, the money he borrowed from his parents." I sat there, swirling my Pinot Grigio. I had a moral choice. I could tell Robert. We could warn him. We could stop him from destroying his future. I thought about the water on the bathroom floor. I thought about the smell of vanilla on his shirt. "Let it ride," I said. 6 months after the breakup. November. The air outside was gray, but inside the warehouse gym, it was hot. "Okay," Miles said. He moved the walker away. He kicked it into the corner. "No crutches, no cane, just you." I stood at one end of the mat. The other end was 20 feet away. It looked like a mile. "Walk to me," Miles said. I took a step. My leg shook, but it held. I took another. The pain was there, a dull roar in the background, but it wasn't the captain of the ship anymore. Step, step, step. I was swaying. I was sweating. I looked like a newborn giraffe learning to exist, but I was doing it. I made it 10 feet, then 15. When I reached Miles, he didn't catch me. He just held out a fist. "Solid," he said. I bumped his fist. Then I burst into tears, ugly, heaving sobs. Not because I was sad, but because I realized I didn't need Cameron to carry me. I didn't need anyone to carry me. It happened in January, a Tuesday. Of course it was a Tuesday. I was working at my drafting table. I'd picked up 2 freelance park design contracts when the doorbell rang. I checked the camera app. It was him. Cameron looked haunted. His suit was ill-fitting, hanging off his frame like he'd lost 20 pounds. His hair was shaggy. He was holding something. I walked to the door. I didn't grab my cane. I walked. I opened it. Cameron's eyes went wide. He stared at my legs, then up at my face. You're standing." "What do you want, Cameron?" He held up a pot. It was a rare ghost orchid, extremely expensive, hard to keep alive. "I saw this," he mumbled, his voice cracking, "and I thought of you. You always wanted one." "I have 3, I lied. "What do you want?" He slumped. "Valerie, she's gone, Cass." She took it, all of it. The investment was fake. The website is down. She blocked my number. I know, I said. I knew months ago. He looked at me, betrayed. You knew, and you didn't tell me? Why would I? I leaned against the doorframe. You called me worthless. Remember? You said I couldn't satisfy you. Did the crypto satisfy you, Cam? I'm broke, he whispered, tears welling up in his eyes. I'm living in my parents' basement. My dad won't even look at me. Cass, please, we were a team. I made a mistake, a huge mistake. But we can fix this. I can help you with your recovery. I'm already recovered, I said. I looked at the orchid. I reached out and took the pot from his hands. Thank you for this, I said. Really? Hope flared in his eyes. Pathetic, desperate hope. No. I dropped the pot. It smashed on the concrete doorstep. Clay shards and dark soil exploded everywhere. The delicate white flower lay crushed in the dirt. Oops, I said. Clumsy me. Cameron's face twisted. The sorrow vanished, replaced by the red-hot rage I remembered. You bitch, he screamed. You heartless bitch. I tried to be nice. He kicked the pile of dirt, sending soil onto my welcome mat. Mrs. Higgins, I yelled, not even looking away from him. Already on the line, honey, Mrs. Higgins shouted from down the hall. Her door was wide open. Police are 3 minutes out. Cameron looked down the hall, then back at me. He spat on the ground. Then he turned and ran. 3 months later. So here we are. It's April. The tulips are blooming in the park I designed. The divorce was finalized last week. I got the apartment. I kept my trust. I even got half of his airline miles, which was petty but satisfying. I saw the news report yesterday. Valerie was arrested in Miami. Turns out running a Ponzi scheme is frowned upon by the FBI. She's looking at 5 to 10 years. As for Cameron, last I heard, he's working at a car rental counter at the airport. He has to wear a polyester uniform. I imagine he spends his days watching people fly away to places he can't afford to go. I'm sitting on my balcony right now. My legs ache a little when it rains, but they work. I'm drinking coffee out of my Riedel glass because I can. Miles is coming over later. We're not official, but he cooks a mean steak, and he doesn't sigh when I ask for water. He just brings the pitcher. He broke my legs, but I broke his life. I'd say we're even, but honestly, I think I won. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.